Hey guys, happy Saturday. It's Logan Hall back with a little quick stream. Basically about a month ago, I bought a dry aging fridge. It's from the Steak Ager brand. I'm trying to remember the model number, but I can't. But anyway, so so again, I bought that about a month ago, and it's been roughly about 28 days. And what I've done is I've dry aged a New York strip loin here. Um, so this started out life as just a typical a strip loin from Costco, right? But then over the course of 28 days, I've had it basically dry aging on this rack here. My my dry aging fridge is in the garage, but again, I wanted to basically show you guys sort of like the end result of this, right? And actually go through the carving process, right? So anyway, so let's get started with that. So this is what's called a boning knife. So this is, really good for when you're, I guess, like, carving meat up, obviously, turkey and, whatnot, but it's great for steaks too. So what I did originally was I put these little pieces of butcher's twine on here, um, basically just to hold it in place into the rack while it's dry aging. So the first thing we're going to do is just undo those. And now we can actually remove this from the spot here. All right, so we've already had a little piece of fat come off, but basically what we want to do first, we want to trim off the ends. And while I should Kilgan Slay, as I go through this process, I'll just kind of explain, what is dry aging, why do you even want to do it, right? Um, so dry aging is the process of essentially allowing your meat to sort of ferment, in a controlled environment. Again, it's going to be your typical, fridge temperatures and whatnot, but the important thing is also being able to maintain a steady airflow as well as sort of the humidity control as well. So all that's very important. Like you don't necessarily need like a real, expensive dry age fridge for this. Um, but it definitely helps with sort of like the airflow. Like given honestly, like the airflow is like a really big part of this to make sure that everything is treated the same throughout. Um, but again, the idea is this doesn't necessarily create like mold necessarily. Like you're not going to be eating like a moldy steak, but the idea is dry aging concentrates the overall steak flavors, right? So instead of uh, basically it's just like a more intense steak flavor, basically. So that's what we're getting with dry aging. Um, so what I'm gonna do, and I probably should have brought out maybe one more pan for this, but um, actually, yeah, I will. Let me go grab one more pan real quick. So this is going to be my pan where we put all of our trimmings. So obviously this one already fell off. Let's go ahead and get into this, and we're going to be cutting fairly deep into this. I would say like at least an inch or two. I'm sorry that my camera's wiggling around it. I'm going to flip it over too. Just about there. All right. So this is sort of the end piece, right? So again, it's like the outer part is basically called the pellicle. Um, so basically, we don't need that piece here, but what we are left with is some nice, again, sort of concentrated, um, flavor here in the middle. Um, so there is a little bit of a discoloration there, sort of the green, but I think that's going to be okay. So basically, what we'll do now is I'm going to flip this around, and we'll down now do the same process on the other side. So you typically lose about 15 to 20% of the overall mass of the loin when you do this. Um, Now, again, what's happening here is the remaining moisture kind of gets concentrated um, into the center. So trim that piece off. But now we have basically the part that we're going to slice into actual individual steaks. You can like with this process, you can only do this with a loin or just a really, really big cut or slice because like this, you're going to be losing a good chunk of this to sort of like the overall dry aging process. Um, so again, and you're going to end up with slightly smaller steaks. Um, but again, the overall idea is you want that more concentrated flavor of beef, and ultimately, there's a scale, right? So typically, dry aging starts at about 28 days worth of that process happening. It can go all the way up to like 45. Um, and some people are crazy enough to take it to like 100 days, right? So, so again, this is my first experiment, so we'll see uh, how this one goes and how it tastes. So later tonight, I'm actually going to be grilling one of these steaks just to see sort of like how I did. Um, but basically, you know, by the end of this process, what you want to look for is just sort of a rich, sort of deep color in here. Um, if you see any little pockets of like actual like like white fuzz or blue or green little spots, then that's that again that's mold, and you don't want to eat the mold. So again, we're going to continue this process by trimming off um, all the sort of outer sort of shell here, and then from there we'll actually slice into individual steaks. So what I want to do next, let me think about this. Yeah, okay. So what I'll do next, I want these steaks to be about 2 inches in thickness. Typically you don't really want to do anything less than an inch. But then like between like an inch and like an inch and a half is fine. Personally, I want 2 inches here. Uh, so again, I don't really have a tape measure here, but I'm just going to go off by overall sort of look and feel. So that's honestly about like an inch and a half, I would say. But I think this will be a good width. A flip over. All right, so that's our first steak. So now what we'll do is we'll actually just trim the steak itself. And this is where we get rid of the actual sort of like the outer shell here. So all this hard stuff on the outside, you don't want that. And again, it's like all this hard stuff. No need for that. And you can, well, okay. So now here's the actual fat cap side. So again, depending on how much fat you like on your calf, you can trim this down to like a quarter inch, like you're gonna even like a half inch if you want. Um, but I'm just gonna trim off just enough until we get sort of the outer sort of hard part out, and then I'll keep on maybe about a quarter inch. Now, a question that you might be thinking is, Logan, can I do anything with these hard pieces here? Unfortunately, you can't because this is sort of like the byproduct of dry aging, and this is really like the bad part of it. You really can't do much with all these trimmings here, um, because okay, if I want to like to turn this into like the tallow, it would be a very off taste tallow because it's been sort of again sort of like everything on like the outside has been exposed to the elements. You know, like for all of this process, right? So the outer pieces have been taking the beating, while the inside is still nice, right? So again, unfortunately, you can't really do a lot there. So I'm just going to trim this up until basically you don't see any more of the hard shell, and then you can make this a little bit cleaner too, just by sort of like rounding off the edges. Again, this kind of goes into sort of like the prep that you would typically see from like a pit master, where they are wanting to trim down like a brisket or some ribs. Sorry, that piece is particularly tough. There we go. So I think that looks pretty good on that side. We'll say this top part could use some cleaning. So I would say that's pretty much there. There is a little bit more of sort of the discoloration, like slightly in the middle there. But I'm not too terribly concerned about that. The main thing was, again, I just wanted to, I guess, show you guys sort of like the process of this piece here. Um, Yogan, Yogan, it's like why you dry age in general. Um, but again, this is sort of like the end product here. Again, you're going to have like that deeper sort of red color, right? Um, again, I just bought like a cheap loin, like I didn't do like the prime this time, just because it was like my first one. I didn't want to spend 400 500 bucks on a loin and then it not be good, right? So I paid like about 150 for this loin here. But anyway, again, this is roughly about 2 inches thick. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put all these ones that we've sliced up over on the side here. And I'll continue this process with you guys. Let's see if there's any comments or chats or anything here. Nope, no worries there. So again, about 2 inches. So this piece is a little bit bigger, but again, for like all the outer shell we don't want. So trim the fat. Again, again, like the main thing here is, just look for like a deep, sort of very dark, almost black color. But again, you don't want any little pockets of like, like white little puffs because that's mold. So there's another piece. Again, nice and thick. So we'll lay that guy down and we'll continue. Again, I'm thinking like one, two, three, four, five, like maybe seven steaks I'll get out of this. That's a nice big piece too. So let's trim. Again, that's mostly all fat. But it's okay to leave some, right? All right. So again, you start out with like a pretty decent piece, but then you get down to like maybe about 8 ounces worth. So that's the byproduct of dry aging there. So let's keep it moving. There we go. Let's do the fat first. So you might be asking, you know, when you cook a dried steak, should you do anything different? Um, Honestly, dried steaks go perfectly fine on the egg style grill. Um, they go well, in the pan, on just like a gas grill too, right? Um, so you don't really have to change anything about that about like what you're doing. But when you grill a dried steak, so I will say that you get more out of it when you do it on charcoal. Charcoal is king, really, like in any kind of situation. Um, so again, just again, if you only have a gas grill, then just use that. If you only have a pan, just use that. But if you have the option to use charcoal, use charcoal. That is what I would recommend. So again, when you're doing the trimming process, you don't want to go too deep into it. You do want to preserve a lot of the actual sort of like meat. You know, uh, but you basically keep on trimming until you don't have any more sort of like the discoloration or like the hard sort of bark piece. Um, just again, so these are so again, it's like these are going to be a bit smaller, right? But again, it's like the flavor that's sort of concentrated in here that makes it worth the process. So let's keep going. There's that. Again, there's a decent, you know, again, there's a decent layer of fat on top. Again, we'll trim all that off and trim off the hard part. Any people in the chat with us? Hey, we do have the Diego here. So Diego, we are doing so basically I did a dry aged steak experiment. I bought a dry aging fridge. And so what we're doing now is so all these or like this whole loin has been in the dry aging fridge for 28 days. So we're now trimming this up and so this evening I will be actually grilling one of these steaks, right? Um, but then for the rest of these, I'm just going to vacuum seal. And when you do a dried steak, you should really vacuum seal it and then actually put the date. Like you can do like 28 days, and then today's the what, the 15th, I think. But anyway, just put the date on there too. Um, that's always a good tip. But anyway, let's keep on trimming here. Let's see. So again, leave about a quarter of an inch fat on the fat cap. But again, there's sort of like the hardened sort of outer part, but we just want to get down to like the actual sort of white fat. Put those off to the side. And if you do see mold, and if it like penetrates pretty deeply into your cut here, then just toss it. Um, that is a sacrifice to the meat gods, and again, like there's really nothing you can do about that. But again, these do trim down by quite a bit. Again, I left about like a quarter of an inch fat there. Um, but again, if you do experience one that is totally just you know totally green or whatever, just toss it. Nothing you can do. So I think I can get three more steaks. You have one, two, three, four, five. I think I can get eight out of this. And then I'll just go ahead and slice these two in half. So there is a little bit of green there, but again, it's not penetrating too deeply. So as long as you just trim that off, you're fine. That guy's good. Any any brown. Uh, so are you asking about brown as in brown mama? Brown mamba. Um, not brown in that sense, Diego, but but again, the outer part is going to have that sort of almost like a dark, almost like black color, and so obviously you have to trim that piece off. Yeah, definitely need to sharpen this knife. So that's what it looks like once it's all trimmed up. We got our last guy here. And he has quite the fat cap here. So again, I'm going to take that down to about a quarter of an inch. Yeah, this guy will probably be the smallest one, unfortunately. Yeah, not too big there, but that's all right. So this is our finished product, guys. What's the waste factor when dry aging? So basically, Diego, you lose between 15 and 30% of your overall sort of stakes here. So again, like you don't necessarily create mold when you do this. You are concentrating the flavor a bit more. So again, you do lose 15%, typically of the moisture. And so like the overall sort of volume, right? Um, so also something else before we wrap this up here. Um, when you want to grill these, you don't want to do like an overnight like salt brine because again, like a lot of the moisture has already been extracted out, and um, so just and just like salt maybe like 30 minutes before you actually put them on the grill here, and you can season then. But again, I wouldn't recommend doing like a salt. Again, it's like an overnight salt brine because you're going to risk making it too dry um, when you eventually grill them. But anyway, guys, that is going to be it for me today. I um, might actually do just like a quick sort of stream when I actually grill this tonight. Um, but I'm not sure yet. Um, so again, hope that was helpful, guys. Again, this so again, like so, this is all the waste basically when you do this process. Um, so be prepared to you know cut off maybe like a third of what you actually bought. Um, but again, I think the end product is worth it. Dried steaks are very tasty. You can take this further, right? So I did this for 28 days. Um, y- Again, common ranges is 28 to 36 to 45 days. Um, when you go to a restaurant, typically when you go to like a steakhouse, I should say, typically what they will advertise is like like 45-day dry aged. And I think for most people, that's sort of the limit on like how much they're willing to actually go. Because again, like the further you go here, the more funk factor that you're going to get. So you're going to start tasting like funky, sort of almost like cheese, like sort of like old cheese. Um, you definitely get like a lot of like earthier notes, so like mushroom almost. Oh, you know what? So earlier I was talking about like should you do anything differently when you're doing a dry aged steak? You can like have like slightly more mature like side dishes. You could do like a uh truffle mashed potatoes. You can do like broccolini, or you can do like mushrooms. Right? So again, pick something that is earthy, and I think that'll pair nicely with your dry aged steak. So again, guys, hope you enjoyed this sort of small sort of impromptu stream here. I was planning on doing this on an Instagram, but I think they changed the requirements for live streaming on Instagram. I think you have to have like 1,000 followers now. And clearly, I'm not going to get that with my average four viewers here. Um, so guys, tell your friends, tell your family about Logan Hall's Grill streams. And reach for the crown, baby, reach for the crown. We're going to be in Dubai, guys. So just a few days away. We are going to get our hands on a camel, um, and we're going to be grilling camel hump. So that'll be very, very cool. Um, but anyway, guys, hope you have a great weekend. Catch us in Dubai. We'll probably do a stream or two here and there. Um, and come on for the ride. So cheers, guys. Have a good one.